One. And hello, my name is Chris Thorne, and welcome back to Making Work Work. Now, I'm an executive and career coach with a passion for helping people to love what they do, especially individuals transitioning into better careers, or organizations and creating places where people want to work and contribute their best potential. And I'm really passionate about talking to people who share a similar passion for creating places where people want to be, where both the employee and the business is thriving. So that is why I'm so excited today to introduce my guest, Jessica Chivers. She is a coaching psychologist, author, and creator of the Talent Keepers, and she specializes specifically in helping employers and employees to manage parental leave, adoption, carers, illness, and especially with furlough being very prevalent with COVID right now. Very, very timely topic. Jessica, hello, nice to see you.
Hello, it's lovely to see you on this really warm day, and I'm sitting here post workout, and what a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, and it's fantastic, isn't it? How we've been able to now just kind of morph, you know, our work life and our home lives, and sort of seeing people in their real environment. That's fantastic.
Great. I love the whole
and just get a bit of headspace, isn't it? It's fantastic. So Jessica, I know I had the great opportunity to just have a little bit of a chat with you prior to our interview, so I have a little bit of background about Jessica, and I know my listeners would be loving to hear, how did you obviously get to do what you are doing now? So just to give you a little bit of background on Jessica. So she started off her early career in learning and development, and she transitioned into coaching women, specifically women who were making the return to work. And these were smart, professional women who'd had, you know, successful careers. And then obviously, as what happens with whenever we have a family, is everything is thrown into relief and we reevaluate things. And the frustration that she kept hearing that these women say over and over again was that, look, you know, I want to go back and I want to have, you know, I want a professional career. I don't want to just go back and do something part-time and, you know, making everything fit around the family and the kids just because it's, you know, it's a flexible thing. And so she initially started off focusing her efforts to help women to have those conversations with employers to get them to come back into work. And she started off by writing a fantastic book called, let me get this title right, Mother's Work: How to Get a Grip on Guilt and Make a Smooth Return to Work. And I think even just the title, thank you. Yeah, that's great. The title says it all. So Jessica, start off and give us a bit of background on them and take us through to kind of how you got to where you are now, please.
Yeah, so the book came about because I live in St Albans in Hertfordshire, and it's a city full of, well, more than this, but there are a lot of accountants, lawyers, management consultants, and I was mixing with a lot of these women when I had my first back in 2006. And hearing them struggle with the idea of going back to work and not being able to do less than full time and carry on at the same level and progress. And this seemed a little bit silly to me, the idea of employers turning somebody down when you've got someone who is motivated, enthusiastic, who's good at what they do. Why would you not try and find a way to make that work? So I originally started out and wanted to write a book for employers called Keeping Mum. Strategies to keep hold of women when they have babies. So that this was before the whole women on boards thing, which then, you know, really caught the city's attention. The UK focused on how do we get more women to the top of our businesses. So the book was quite timely. It came, and obviously I'd written it before then, but it came out around then. And that was really the springboard for the business that I started and that I still run today with a great team of people. So yeah, the Talent Keeper Specialist was really focused on helping employers hang on to women when they have children, but it quickly broadened out to recognise all the other types of leave as well. And I think we're unique in the marketplace, Chris, in that we are very much focused on helping employers to keep any colleague feeling connected, confident and cared for when they take extended leaves. This isn't just simply about mothers or even parents. It could be someone having a hip operation and having many months out, or coming back from mental health leave or carers leave. So that's how I sort of came to be doing what I'm doing today.
And Jessica, what is it about this that you are passionate about? What is it that you felt strongly that this was an issue worth focusing your business around?
That's such a lovely question. This feels so self-indulgent. I think I've always had a thing, Chris, about waste. I can't
Ah, okay.
waste, and the idea of someone trading down to do something that isn't commensurate with their skills and abilities, you know, if they don't want to, if that, I'm not preaching about people that, you know, trade into something different because they want to, but feeling that they can't. And I think I've always had a really strong sense of advocacy. I told you on a sort of pre-call about my one time thinking I was going to go and be a lawyer in America representing women on death row.
Absolutely. So you clearly have, you know, a sense of justice and rightness, and which I think is fantastic. It's what's needed in something like this, isn't it?
Well, you know, I think I've got a blend of experiences and drive and interest that means every day I love what I do, Chris, and I love what we do as a business, and I really enjoy the HR people that we interact with as our clients, and then our end users, if you like, of our products as well. So I feel very fortunate. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So listen, so Jessica, I mean, as you were starting to make this transition then from, okay, so I've been helping these women, I've written this book, but now I'm thinking I need to broaden this out, and then you decided to form the Talent Keepers. What were some of the challenges that you faced initially? Because you could say that this was you were almost a little bit ahead of the curve, really, weren't you, in terms of kind of bringing some of these issues to the awareness of organizations. So were there any particular challenges that you faced as you went out trying to help employers to understand the value in, you know, focusing on supporting these returners so that they would actually want to return to work?
Yeah, I think budget's always a challenge. Some people are not switched on to the idea of keeping hold of great people and thinking, you know, there are other people out there, you know, but I think by and large, one of the things that we have come across time and again, which has actually led to one of the things that we now do, is there only ever being a real drive and desire to coach people who are at a certain place in the org chart.
Right.
Again, that sense of justice in me and hearing from HR business partners, heads of HR, that it would be great to be able to support everybody.
Yeah. Line managers especially. I know that's one of your passions, isn't it?
Yeah. Led us to create our newest product offering, which is called Comeback Community. And that's sort of a digital offering, which means we can reach many more people at a really affordable rate for a business. And I think, you know, you've mentioned like line managers. We would it wasn't really a barrier, but I had to sort of educate people on, you know, we'd want to involve the line manager in this process. So all of our coaching work involves some contact with the coach who is working with the person who's taking leave, that same coach having a little bit of time with that person's line manager,
right,
to do a behavioural upskill with the line manager on the things that she or he needs to be doing and saying at what time that will really make a difference for their colleagues' experience of taking leave and coming back.
I mean, did you find that do you think there's any sort of, I don't know how to describe it, like almost attitudes in terms of, you know, people coming back to work? Because I know one of the things that people often fear when they do leave and then they try and transition back in is that, and especially I've seen this when I've interviewed people for around the flexible working issue, is that there's almost like a perception that unless people sort of fit into this norm, if you like, you know, when we work, how we work, or even that we just, you know, we don't take leave, we don't do these things. It's almost like a perception that those people are, I don't know, somehow less committed to doing a good job. Have you found that?
I think, you know, I have been running this business now for 8 years, and I think the very beginning, to your point around flex, I think there is an awful lot of awkwardness for people who are coming back to work because they've had a child, so their life had shifted in such a huge way, and they had like a second job to do after they got home, and this other relationship that is, you know, a child that they want to spend time with, in a way that if you'd say been out on a sabbatical traveling, you wouldn't have the same life.
No, you're right. It's a different issue, isn't it?
So I think one of the things we would see is, especially women who were very, very committed. And when I say committed, they sort of showed it through the amount of time that they put into their work and time in the office, that then when they came back and had certain time limits, time constraints about what time they could actually get in because of nursery opening hours or leave, there could be this feeling of, gosh, do people still see me as a player?
Yeah.
Do they still see me as ambitious and wanting the same thing? And I always feel that that's so awful for those individuals, that they're doing all this questioning and that colleagues might be questioning them, because these are people who are doing a terrific job, day job, then they're going home and doing a second shift, possibly logging back on in the evening, Chris, you know, and incredibly committed to trying and making family work and the professional piece work. So, you know, it can be very hard, but I think over the last 8 years, we've started to see more change. And there's been a really rapid acceleration over the last 6 months due to enforced home working for many, many people. Where we've begun to see many more men jigsawing their life together, piecing things together, you know, some childcare, a bit of homeschooling, work. So I think that's been a positive to come out of this, although it has been horrendous for many, many people without any childcare, hugely mentally
not the norm.
No, but I do think it's very hard to be a professional and a parent unless both of you have got supportive employers and both of you are giving you know, equal amounts to the home environment, which invariably still is not the case. You know, it's disproportionately women who are picking up the domestic load and the mental load as well, not just the actual folding of sheets and nappies in the bag that goes off to the childminder or the nursery. It's huge.
It is, and obviously that does make an impact upon, you know, anyone's ability to provide, to do well in either area, isn't it? Because you're sort of feeling slightly pulled one way or the other. Now, obviously, the more an employer in particular can do to support people so that they can balance those two aspects, because people do have lives outside of work. And that's one of the things I love about your business, Jessica, is that, you know, you're really trying to help employers understand that, you know, they can find ways to manage that situation so that, you know, both needs are met on both sides, and everybody's going to win, aren't they? Everyone will benefit. So tell me a little bit about, now, when I originally connected with Jessica, I'd actually met her on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's a wonderful platform. And she was, at that time, she was putting out a bit of she was putting out a call to speak to chief people officers, HR leaders, because she was having a number of conversations around COVID and the impact on, you know, the remote and flexible working. And she pulled together what would we call that, a white paper, I suppose, a report on returning to work. So it was all around remote working, flexible working, and I'm happy to say that she's now published those findings in a fantastic report that's available to employers that want to know, and, well, basically, I think to normalize experience, but also to get tips and hints from other organizations out there. Can you tell us a little bit more about the report and some of the themes that kind of came out of your research, Jessica?
I would love to. So here's a report.
Fantastic.
Many happy.
Excellent.
Many happy returns, question mark. So we never intended to publish this. We just wanted to go and have conversations, you know, listen, absorb, hear what chief people officers were thinking. And at the same time, we were doing a bit of road testing and checking of something we've been working on and refining some ideas and wanting that input. And the conversations that myself and my colleague Laura were having, Laura took the lead on this. She was brilliant, having lots of these conversations. What came back when we did some thematic analysis were some really common themes. And I thought, you know what, if I was an HR director in a small or a medium-sized business, or even a big organization, I think I'd be really curious to know what my peers were thinking and doing, because there has been no playbook.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think the weight of the world was really on leaders of business, the most senior people, and HR shoulders to make remote working work. How do you maintain cohesion and a sense of belonging? So we thought, well, we could wrap this into a report and put it out to the world so that HR people could hear and see and feel what their peers were thinking and feeling. So the 5 themes that came out of the report were, number 1, what we're calling the new mixed economy. And this is about maintaining equality of opportunity for employees regardless of where they work. That's certainly a big theme, because you're going to have some people who continue to work from home, some people who want to come in every day, and a blend of the two. So how do you keep that equality? Because lots of managers could be thinking out of sight, out of mind. The second thing that came out was what we're calling structure and certainty, and that's about acknowledging the need for security, that employees are craving this sense of security, and that's difficult for HR to provide. So some thinking around that,
especially in times like these when very little things are certain.
Totally, absolutely. And the third one plays into the state of me today, really. No makeup, manky hair, wearing my gym gear. This third thing was called keeping up appearances, and this was about how do we help employees feel comfortable with remote working, and what are the rules? Do we have etiquette about, I think at first people rush to, dress for work and show, I am working, and then I think people gradually often we're more prepared to talk about, well, I'm dressed like this because actually today I've woven in 4 client calls, a bit of running, and it makes sense for me not to make my face up just to sit on this call, because it really should be about what I'm saying rather than what I look like. And then in 4th place was the future of flex. So that was about how we continue to modernize attitudes around flexible working. There were some great quotes in the report, actually, and one that sticks in my mind was an HR director who was saying there were some noises being made by the partners in the firm about, well, this remote working is okay for now because it's sort of being foisted upon us and we'll make it work, but it's not ideal. And so there's this sort of thing about how do we capitalize on the gains that have been made and really integrate flexibility into the way that we do business. And then the last thing we're calling our 5th theme is all together now. And that's about healing the hurt of furlough and rekindling team connectedness.
Gosh, I think that's quite a powerful message. You're right, because obviously there's been such far-reaching impacts on that. And I mean, I've been reading, I'm sure you have, there's been a lot of articles in the press recently trying to, I don't know, almost really kind of persuade people that, this flexible working thing, this remote working thing, it's not sustainable. The economy can't sustain it because we've built this whole economy in city centers around, supporting people commuting to the office. And therefore, if you're staying home, that you're sort of somehow taking advantage and not supporting the economy. And there's a bit of almost like a guilt push, being put forth in this area. But actually, I mean, do you think really that we're going to have to really think hard going forward, though, about how we make this work? Because people obviously, having worked from home now, they recognize the benefits and of having a more balanced life, but also we have obviously realize the challenges of staying more connected via a remote means. I mean, what sort of shifts do you think we're going to have to make to really kind of keep a hold of the gains that we've made going forward, but not obviously give into the negative aspects?
I mean, it's difficult to separate out my personal view from the research that I have read and just my sense of what I'm feeling. But I think there has to be some sort of directive. That's too strong a word. I think there needs to be, for each organisation, a sense of this is how we work, okay, and we want to work in a high trust way, but we do want you to come in into a shared space a couple of days a week. I think for a lot of people coming in, having conversations serendipitous conversations that you might not ordinarily have, a change of scene. Coming into, if you work 5 days a week, I do think coming into a shared space a couple of is a really good idea. I think there are lots of benefits from working from home. In fact, I just was writing a piece about what I think would entice people to come back to the office, and I kid you not, I think it's about having doors on offices and people having their own offices, because not from a health and safety point of view, but again, I'm tapping in some research that I read. I won't go into it here because I'll misquote it, but one of the things that people really like about working from home is that quiet time, being
you can think.
you can think, as well as from a practical point of view, if you say have a family or have a big domestic load, being able to weave in some of those tasks, get, you're not, you know, you're saving time on commuting, as well as perhaps the health bit, get down the gym or get running.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I do think we need to make our way back to our workspaces, somewhere between a third and 50% of our working hours. Knowledge workers, you know, please come back. I think we have amazing cities, and I think it's good for business, it's good for individuals to come and mix and have those serendipitous conversations that don't happen. And if I may, you know, one other thought that I have in my mind is that I feel young people have been very, very hard hit by this. And when I say young people,
Yes,
I'm not going to.
yes, I remember we were talking about this, weren't we? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'm not talking about, I won't go and talk about students and school, you know, people at school, because that's not appropriate for this, although I have my views on that. You think about people at the early stages of their career, or new joiners to an organisation. How do they sort of get in the vibe and get on the radar of more senior people? Yes, there are other means that you can do remotely, but it's more difficult. And I think if you are in the office picking up on things, learning what's what and who's who, and hearing things, I think if you're established, Chris, you know who's who, your stock is high, it's fairly easy to work remotely without too many deleterious effects. But if you're a new joiner or you're young, and not to mention if you're young and you're working from your parents' house or from a flat share, which is incredibly difficult, just think, for them, we need to get back into some shared space. That's my view.
I agree. I do think there's definitely, it's the balance though, isn't it? It's just having the opportunity to blend both home life and work life. But as I empathize with what you're saying, my youngest son is doing an industrial placement at the moment, and he's working remotely for the first month, but he's looking forward to, as you say, getting in the office, mixing with that team, getting to know people, obviously having an opportunity to learn. As you say, you just pick up things that you wouldn't normally pick up if you weren't there. But what's nice is if we can come to some arrangement where we have a blend, you know, even if you had one day a week working from home. I remember as a contractor, that used to be huge for me, you know, just to have that one day, you know, that you didn't have to get up, fight the commute or whatever. You could do a bit of exercise, or you could just kind of fit in a little bit of life around it or something, or you could start really early so you could finish early or whatever. It makes such a difference, really, and it's just recognizing that. So, I mean, tell me a little bit. Now, I know that you worked with lots of different organizations like BlackRock and the CIPD and ITV. And I mean, and I think your first client was it Veolia Water, I think, was it? That's how Talent Keepers came about. So can you just tell us a little bit about some of the work that you've done with some of these clients, and what sort of changes have you been able to help them make in terms of their returners and their extended leave?
Love to. So yeah, our very first client back in 2012 was Veolia Water, as it was then. And that was to produce a line manager guide to having conversations, so what to do, what to say when someone's taking maternity leave. And that was really about educating a mainly male managerial population on things that they didn't have experience of, because they hadn't been through it themselves, many of whom had never taken a period of extended leave, because sabbaticals are rare, you know, and not all of them had ever experienced sort of being away. So it was educating them, and the feedback was great from our client, and that went on to be a piece of collateral that we then used and shared with all of our clients since. So we started the business very much with the ethos that you couldn't just, our work couldn't simply be about coaching women who were coming back. It also needed to be about shaping the culture, shaping the landscape into which those women were returning. And when we talk about shaping the culture and the landscape, we're talking very much about the line manager, because we know that the line manager's behaviours are the single biggest driver of an employee's level of
satisfaction. Yeah, absolutely. Because and most people will tend to leave a job because they're not happy with that relationship with their line manager, typically, won't they?
Yeah, so that was our starting point, was producing a guide, so a piece of collateral for them, so some internal comms, and obviously some coaching work. We went on and we worked with PayPal, and yeah, I'm not going to sort of just do a whole roll call of names, but the thing that we do the most of to this day continues to be one-to-one time. So really helping an individual to transition off onto leave, feeling confident, feeling they've left things in a good state. This is if it's a planned leave. Obviously a sick leave, it's entirely different.
Yes.
And then lots of our coaching assignments are focused at the point of return. So that's about helping an individual to rekindle those feelings of credibility and confidence, and we use various tools. So as a psychologist, I'm very informed by the world of positive psychology, which is the study of strengths, of what's right with people, positive qualities, values. And so we use a strengths profiling tool, which helps have a conversation with a returning colleague around what they're good at, the impact they had before they went on leave. So you're really helping them to reconnect with their stories that may be laying dormant in their minds about themselves as professionals. So that's coaching. We also run workshops for colleagues who are returning, where an organisation has a critical mass, Chris.
Sure.
You know, where you've got high numbers in a certain geography, and we workshops for line managers as well, of colleagues returning. And then our sort of newest innovation is something called Comeback Community, and that's a whole series of digital resources to help people, you know, right across the grades, the line managers and people taking leave, to feel that sense of being confident, connected and cared for, you know, all the way through their leave, through having resources sent to them that they can look at, timely prompts essentially. And we're just building out a bigger, more rounded experience than just the resources online. So that's really exciting for us, and we've got our first early adopter of that.
That's very exciting. So we'll obviously have to watch this space to hear how they get on. I mean, what sort of difference do you find, or what are some of the key benefits or key things that you see these organizations get, from where you start working with them, where maybe you've come into a space and they're not really clear on how to best handle this whole issue around people with extended leave. And of course with COVID, my goodness, we have huge numbers of people in this space right now trying to figure this out as well. And where do you kind of see them starting from in terms of trying to figure these issues, and then where do you see them ending up at the end of working with someone like yourself?
Yeah, well, I think what you're asking me really is how do organisations benefit? What do they see?
Sure, yeah.
And I think we hear and see many different benefits, and I can be really anecdotal about this because I think everyone loves a story.
Oh, please.
I think about examples of individuals where they have known that they've had access to some coaching time. They've known that it's there waiting for them when they are preparing to come back, and they've tapped into that coaching time whilst they've still been away on leave. And I'm thinking of one individual who I worked with who said, I've just seen that there's this job internally, but I can't look at that now because I'm on mat leave. And we explored it. She ended up going through the interview process while she was on mat leave and getting that job. Why does this matter? Well, it was a signal to other women around the business that you can progress when you're on maternity leave.
Fantastic, yeah.
It pushed that individual into a different grade in the business, which ultimately helped with gender pay gap, because that was one more woman at a certain level.
Excellent, yeah.
Ultimately, it helped that person to stay in the business. She had options. I think about just improve relationships with line managers. I think about the time it takes to get back to peak performance being shrunk through coaching conversations, where you can really get to the root of some of the beliefs that are going on in the individual's head, some of the problems, just articulating them and then strategizing, problem solving. That's what coaching is at the very heart.
Yeah.
Giving someone a thinking space so they can work out what is really going on here, and we can work it out. So we hear people talking about, I feel like I'm back, my head is back in the game, more quickly than if they were left, even with a
To their own
supportive,
devices.
yeah, left their own devices. So I think it's about, you know, keeping hold of people. I think it's about shrinking the time it takes to get back to peak performance. And I also think there's something that isn't measured in organisations, but that's about how quickly somebody starts to go into a promotion process or start looking for the next thing or adding value beyond the role that they do. And I think coaching can really ignite that drive again, or help that drive and help people reach for that next role when they are ready. So the firm wins because you're retaining that knowledge. And from a gender pay gap point of view, if you've got a woman that's stepping up into a higher paid role, that helps with that. But of course, our work isn't just with women, it's with men as well. And we've been doing some really interesting coaching work over the last couple of months with people returning from furlough, and also with people who are feeling anxious. They may feel like they have lost their mojo. They may be floundering in some cases and just not sure where their focus should be. That really short, single, standalone coaching session is just helping to get their head back again. That's where I need to focus. That's what's going to make the difference. Yes, that is the right thing to do. Again, just talking some of these things out in a way that you can't always be completely honest with a line manager or with your co-workers or with family because they don't get it, or with friends where you feel you've got to, if they listen to you.
You only feel comfortable sort of saying so much, don't you? Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. So there's some of the benefits that I think it's fair to say our clients are getting because they've invested in a bit of independent ear, you know, independent talk time, sounding board time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting what you were saying about just that one individual who was on the maternity leave and just applying for that role, and just kind of like that whole perception and just the knock on, the ripple effect of that really happening is that's quite interesting. It's quite extraordinary. I mean, what are some of the biggest myths that you think, you know, that kind of exist in this whole thought around extended leave and people coming back to work after something like this?
I think one of them is sometimes you can get quite a maternalistic or paternalistic attitude from line managers who think, you know, you don't want stretch anymore, or because, well, you've got a child now and you'll want to dial down what you do and you won't want to do the international travel. Or so to say, you know, people still making assumptions about what people want. I also think people don't realize just how long it can take to feel comfortable again. You know, we've been hearing a lot lately from coaches who are saying, well, I've been back 3.5, 4 weeks now.
Right.
People are treating me like I've never been away, which on the one hand is great because I've obviously
hopefully we've integrated.
Yeah, but you know, not sort of recognizing that there's a lot you might need to pick up and you know, learn about again, and just getting the lay of the land. And one of the funniest things, well, not funny, but because of the time that we're in, is I think we all went through this huge, whoa, how do we work now? Less so for because we're used to remote working with certain clients.
Yeah.
But went through this whole learning curve about how do you interact now as a team and with clients when you're working like this. And of course, if you're coming back from leave now and all of your team have got established customs and feel comfortable working in this virtual world, there's this sort of catching up to do on, oh, how does this work? If you haven't been in the workplace, you've been away on leave during this enforced working from home. So there's something about learning some new skills about how to interact and how to just this whole thing, Chris, you know, it's strange, isn't it, working like this?
It is. And I mean, and what are some of the sort of key, I don't know, trends or skills that you think people are going to have to, you know, embrace or develop in order to thrive in this new normal with this flexible and remote working?
I think we've been encouraging people that we're working with to go and have those one-to-one interactions with people as though they've just met next to the kettle.
Yeah.
And it might feel a bit cringy, a little bit strange, but to contact people and say, you know, it'd be great to catch up 20 minutes, 15, 20, 25 minutes. I'd love to hear what's been happening for you in the business. I'm just going to listen, and, you know, perhaps you'll give me some techniques on how to cope in this new virtual world. But just being quite sort of lighthearted about it and saying, you know, if you've got time, and, you know, and getting into people's diaries and hearing what's going on. And because I think that's one of the key things when you go back to work, we always encourage the people we're working with to put their inbox on the back burner and focus on going and having real live
conversations, yeah,
with human people, with human people. What other people are there? I'm scared.
Exactly. No, I know, but they're colleagues, basically going back and having conversations with people. You're right, as opposed to just kind of diving back into the detail of you know, the admin or the paperwork or whatever. You're right, because you're right. That's how you're going to get up to speed. And obviously, you've got to be fair, I think, is it safe to say you've got to rebuild those relationships a little bit if you've been away for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, and you know, I think one of the things we hear that puts people off is sort of saying, especially if we'll often do some sort of stakeholder mapping and some mapping around, you know, if you've got some ambitions for where you want to go next, and you're thinking about, well, who are the key people that need to know you're back and need to know what you're working on and what your aspirations are, is they think, oh, I can't reach out to that person, they're way too senior, they're way too... We say, no, being on leave, it's the perfect hook. And actually, really smart senior leaders love hearing from new joiners and people who've been away, because they have a fresh perspective. And they
that's fantastic, yeah.
They see the wood for the trees. And so, you know, as a senior leader, you should be really interested in people that have been away or are new, because they look at things differently. And so we'll say, no, go on, you know, connect with this person and ask for a little bit of time, only, you know, a short bit of time. And one of the things that stops me is thinking, oh, you know, they're busy, can I, can't I? But what would I say? What would I say, Jessica? And I say, you don't have to say anything. You can set that call up and say, I'm like a sponge. I just want to hear what's been happening from your perspective, you know, what changes have happened, what things do you see coming down the track, how have you handled working from home? Just teach me, I just want to listen. And most people
people love to be asked their opinion and give advice on that, don't they? So yeah, I think most people will probably be very receptive. And I'm trying to remember if it was you that I was having this conversation with about how we're having sort of like intergenerational mentoring and coaching sort of going on, because we have we have like 5 generations in the workplace now. And so organization, you know, the savvy organizations are sitting here looking at how can we actually get, you know, say younger people to, you know, mentor or coach older people, or, you know, sort of cross teams and cross functionally and really kind of share, you know, the diversity and the wealth of knowledge that we have across all these different levels.
Totally. And it can breed such unexpected positive results. And it takes me back to my days at Barclays. So I had started down the grad scheme, and I was in a marketing stream, but I ended up in a sort of a learning and development, culture development type role in the marketing and communications area of the bank in the city at the head office on Lombard Street, as it was at the time. And we did a whole function event that was designed to bring all the different aspects of marketing and comms together. So PR, internal comms, events, etc., etc. And it was my team that was the team that I was in that was responsible for designing this event. And one of the things we did was we took everybody's name in the function and put it on a slip of paper into this big goldfish bowl, and we asked them to pick their name out, or pick a name out, and then they that was someone they needed to go and have a coffee with. Now obviously we were not going to...
Oh, what a great idea.
But go and have a coffee with, and then, you know, and we heard some really great stories then about, I think things like this are fairly commonplace now, but we're going back. Well, I left Barclays in 2004, so this is going back at least 16 years. And that I think we were ahead of our time then about encouraging this cross-pollination, this meeting, and and it was great about building bridges across different domains of marketing and comms, some really quite different disciplines. And yeah, I just think it's great if you can cross-pollinate like that.
Oh, that's excellent. That's and you know, because the desire for connection hasn't gone away. I mean, we've got so many different technological platforms, and obviously we need to have different solutions to meet people where they are, but that fundamental desire to connect between people, I think that never goes away. And you're absolutely right. That's such a timely reminder. Is there any advice that you'd give to, because I know you work with so many different people. You work with the employees themselves coming back from work, and obviously you support, the line managers that are managing those employees. But then we've got, the HR talent and the learning and development people themselves. And then I understand that you also work with program sponsors, which I thought was quite interesting as well. Is there any advice that you would give to people who are either looking to put a program in place to, especially with COVID and furlough, or in working in conjunction with those HR people? What advice might you give them about things they should be thinking about as they develop these programs?
I think you need to go back to your employee opinion survey data regularly. And I know lots of organisations have been pulsing staff regularly, taking a temperature check. How are you feeling? What's going on? How's this working for you? Look at that data. Really try and understand where the problems are, where the bright spots are. So whenever we start work with an organisation, say if we were working with an executive sponsor or a head of an employee network approached us, rather than say a learning and development, a talent, an HR person, we would say, well, what is it that you're trying to achieve? What is the problem? What do you... Don't just buy a solution and think that's what your competitors are doing or you should be doing it. Really try and understand what will make a critical difference to your organisation and what are you trying to achieve. Because it might not be the solution that you think. And I'm a scientist. My degree is psychology, and in data I trust, and measuring, understanding what is going on. And I think before you try and do any intervention, and I think it was Einstein who said, given an hour to save the world, spend 55 minutes defining the problem.
That's so true, isn't it? How often do we just dive in and start trying to brainstorm solutions and ideas, and actually it's usually the way we see the problem is the problem. So often just getting clear on what that actual problem is. You're so right.
Yeah. So that would be my first suggestion. And the second would be subscribe to our newsletter every 2 weeks. We're putting out some ideas, we're signposting things, we're talking about our work, what we're noticing. And of course, there's the podcast, Talent Keeping, which...
Yes, tell us a little bit about that. Now, I know you've kicked off that series, and you've your sort of topic at the moment, your little series at the moment, I guess you'd say, is around brilliant bosses. Yeah. What sort of insights or takeaways have you sort of gleaned from that you might be happy to share?
Oh, it's been such a treat, Chris, such a treat. So the podcast is called Talent Keeping, and we're about spinning the spotlight on the policies and the practices that help organizations attract and keep great people.
Very timely.
Yeah. And so season 1, we've led with brilliant bosses. And this has meant 10 conversations with 10 different individuals about either their current boss or a boss that was really superb. And we asked them to talk about 3 key things, 3 key behaviours that really made that boss, make them describe them as remarkable. And there's been a whole variety of things. We're on episode 7 at the moment, so there's 3 more to come out. And what we're hearing is empathy, so really understanding the individual, being bothered about the individual.
Oh, that's huge.
Really key thing. Giving people time, being interested in their development. And ultimately, I think brilliant bosses are people who want to lead and develop others. And I say in the season intro, I talk about brilliant bosses and why I wanted to do this season, because I've always had this interest and this niggle in the fact that you can be a fantastic practitioner, great at what you do, and the way that you get rewarded when you get to a certain point is, here, have a team. Well, if you are
and the 2 skills don't necessarily mix, do they? Because we can have someone who's great at the day job, but managing and getting the best out of a team of people is a different skill set. And if you don't happen to have those skills, you can really feel a bit at sea. I've had a number of conversations with people around, you know, how do we help people how do we support people in this space, and especially, you know, it's even been identified that these people, I guess I call them accidental managers, you know, people that find themselves in this role, actually, if we don't equip them with the right skills and knowledge, they can actually do quite a lot of damage, to be fair. And it's the same with entrepreneurs who start a business and then need to hire people in order to scale. You have to learn how to manage people in order to do that.
Yeah. So it's great, you know, and I think we put that together thinking this would be of interest to HR, it would be interest to line managers. And some of my absolute favourites were an episode that's just come out about someone called Catherine Radin, who's the founder of a law firm, Radin Solicitors. And it's a really lovely story, because it's not only is it about Catherine Radin, this brilliant boss, and the culture that's a very flexible culture. It's a culture that I've admired for a long time. So a law firm that's sort of set out to almost poach city talent out into Hertfordshire by offering flexibility. So all roles flex. You have partners who work less than full time, but also it's a tale of someone who was a criminal lawyer, who took 12 years out, became a food journalist, and now has gone back to the law, into family law, which is what Radin's Solicitor specialises in. So that's of interest from a career.
It's a fascinating story of transition, isn't it?
Totally. And then, because, you know, these episodes are going out in September, we've saved these two for September. So that was a first in September. The podcast goes out every 2 weeks. The one that's coming out next, which I'm hugely excited about, is with someone who joined the world of journalism age 48. She had not been a journalist before then, but through a blind interview process. So it was literally write a blog, show us what you can do. She ended up with an internship at the Spectator magazine, so Britain's oldest weekly magazine, a political magazine. So that episode is all about Fraser Nelson, the editor of the magazine, and his just really forward-thinking approach, meritocracy, and it's fantastic. And we've interviewed people at the CIPD, at GlaxoSmithKline, PwC, and they're just really great stories if you want to hone your leadership skills and be inspired. So it's been a pleasure doing that.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. Well, and what are you researching at the moment? Is there any sort of hot topics that you're really interested in at the moment in this current field?
Well, I think season 2, what I'd really like to do is to shine a spotlight on some unusual practices.
Ah, okay. Such as?
Well, okay, this is a really silly one, but it's something from when I was at Barclays. I always wanted to have sleep pods in the office, because I believe in the power of napping in the afternoon. I think you have a 20-minute power nap, you come back, you're refreshed, you give more to the business. So imagine, I want to hear about businesses that are doing unusual things that are making a difference to people enjoying being in that workplace, making them, want to stay there and being able to do more great work. So unusual practices, I would really like to shine a spotlight on that. I'd also like to do a future series on organisations that are doing great things around gender. I'll always a real passion and fire inside of me for gender equality. So I'd like to hear some stories about what people are doing that are working. So I can see lots of different seasons coming for the podcast, but I think the starting point now would be some unusual things. A bit like TED.com, whose strapline is ideas worth spreading. I wanted to start this podcast to just put things out there, thinking this is a fantastic line manager, or this is a fantastic policy. Look at this, look at how it's working. Let's think about how you could apply it in your organisation. So I love to put people in touch with things that are good and working and fruitful. So
fantastic. Yeah. Oh, and I mean, are there any things around flexible working that you've run across as you've been researching this that you've really thought were really great best practices that companies could look at?
Well, I think in terms of specifically on flex, I think core hours, that's a really good policy. So allowing people to come and go as they need to, but acknowledging there are some core hours when people need to be available and having
accessible, right?
Core meetings. So then it makes it easier for people that need to be somewhere else, perhaps because they have got a long commute, or they've got animals they need to take care of, or they've got people they need to take care of, to not feel embarrassed or they need to explain themselves. So I think core hours are absolutely excellent. That would be my number one thing, is let's just move to a core hours culture. And really
Fantastic. Okay. Well, Jessica, listen, thank you so much for your time and your input today. Is there now, just if anybody wants to know how to find you, because obviously we've mentioned so many fantastic resources in this podcast, and obviously I will provide links to Jessica's site and her podcast. And I think you had to go on Jessica's site to get the link to the paper. And of course you can connect with Jessica via LinkedIn. Is there anywhere else that you'd suggest that people go to find out more about you?
I think the website is the obvious one. You can subscribe to the newsletter there. You can listen to the podcast there. So that's talentkeepers.co.uk. And we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, at Talent Keepers UK. And if there are people listening, Chris, to this who think, my organisation is doing something quirky or a bit different, or that I don't think is quite yet common practice, doesn't have to be as out there as having sleep pods, but just anything that you think, oh, this is a good practice and I'm not sure every organisation knows about this or does this, please be in touch with me, because we want some more fodder for the next season.
Okay. The wheels are turning already. I can think of a few.
Brilliant.
Think of a few solutions there. Fantastic. Okay, great. Well, listen, again, Jessica, thank you so much for your time and your input today. I know my listeners are going to be really excited to hear everything you have to say, and obviously some great resources to have to hand to check out to support you as you are trying to help your people to make that transition back into work, possibly from a furlough situation, but from any other extended leave scenario. And of course, we just need to keep our eyes and ears open. Whenever something great comes along on our radar like this, be quick to share it with other people so that we can kind of embrace this new working culture. And, as you say, keep the gains that we've made and not dwell on what we've potentially lost. Thank you again so much. And I will be seeing you soon on my next edition of Making Work Work. And Jessica, again, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very, very much for having me. I've really enjoyed it, Chris. Thank you.